Before boarding a train bound for Washington, D.C. to become the 16th President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln spent over 20 years in Springfield, Illinois as a lawyer, legislator, and family man. In this video, we'll take a look at his home and his office and the Lincoln Presidential Museum and Library. And make sure that you stick around to the end of this video where I'm going to share some of the more mysterious supernatural history surrounding both Mr. and Mrs. Lincoln.
Trip in Southeast Asia.
In 2022, I had the opportunity to spend time in Abraham Lincoln's adopted hometown of Springfield, Illinois, where I was invited as a guest by the tourism board at Visit Springfield. Thanks to their hospitality, I was able to visit with the chief interpreter and historian of the Lincoln home and explore the home before official visiting hours, and here's our conversation.
My name is Tim Townsend. I'm the Chief of Interpretation and Historian here at Lincoln Home National Historic Site. I've been working here for about 31 years.
How or what inspired you to join the Park Service?
It's more honestly an interest in history from in college on up through, and I've always been interested in historic sites, museums, that kind of work. So it sort of led to investigating this kind of work, and I came across these positions at the National Park Service at the Lincoln Home and started as a seasonal interpreter 31 years ago.
That's amazing. Tell us a brief story about the house and when the Lincolns lived here, and if there's any other stuff before and after they lived here.
The Lincolns moved into this home in 1844. The home was about 5 years old, a small cottage then that they remodeled during the 17 years that they lived here to the size and the shape that it is today. And this is the home where the Lincolns raised their family. Mr. and Mrs. Lincoln moved in with their young son, Robert, who was about a year old. 3 more sons were born here in the home. Eddie, Willie, and Thomas, or Tad. Eddie passed away here in the home. Ultimately, Robert went off to Harvard College, and young Willie and Tad were the 2 boys who went to Washington with Mom and Dad when Lincoln became president.
Okay, so they were here for quite some time then.
Right.
So
Yep.
That's good there. And what's your favorite part of the history here?
Well, I think talking certainly about Lincoln and the Lincoln family, which is a lesser known aspect of the story, that people come here expecting or come here with the image of Lincoln as that guy at the Lincoln Memorial, that larger than life president. But here we talk more about him as a husband, a father, a neighbor, part of the community, and someone who provided the opportunity, but also the challenge of facing the issues of this country, slavery, and that challenge that was dividing the nation. And that's all happened while he was living here.
That's really good. And you may have answered my last question, but why do you think people should visit the Lincoln home?
Well, I think it's important to come here and get that side of Lincoln, the husband and the father, but also to get a glimpse into the Springfield community, the diversity of the community, both in terms of African Americans, but also immigrants. And that's the community that shaped the man that we know as Abraham Lincoln. As a politician, as an attorney here in Springfield, he would have interacted with all of these different people that would have helped shape who he became and his viewpoints, and the man that we know as President Lincoln.
Right, and there's also I'm not known on the history. There are like this is one part. The home is just one part. There's another. The whole neighborhood or a few blocks are actually preserved, and you learn about some of those stories here too, right?
Right, yeah. So we have the national park that surrounds the Lincoln home is 4 city blocks, 12 acres. There are homes that were here at the Lincoln time period, a few of them. And it's not so much a restoration, but just an area that protects the Lincoln home, a park that we have where we talk about multiple stories, everything from a neighbor of Lincoln's named Jameson Jenkins, who was an African American and a conductor on the Underground Railroad. And there was an event he was involved with in 1850. Up the street, Julius Rosenwald of Sears and Roebuck fame and Rosenwald Schools fame lived. Now, he wasn't born until 1862 after Lincoln left for Washington, but he lived ultimately his boyhood years across the street from the Lincoln home. So certainly was influenced by the shadow of Lincoln, as we
Right.
still are.
So yeah, so lots here, not just the home. So that's really good. And Tim, this is such great information. I appreciate you taking time to share this information, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks again, Tim, for the talk and the tour. I did want to add that I did do the official tour later on in the day, which is free, but it is limited to 15 people at a time, so advance tickets are needed, which are obtained at the visitor center. As a condition of sale to the National Park Service for $1, Lincoln's oldest son, Robert, mandated that the home was free of charge for all visitors. If you're lucky during summer months, you may run into Mr. Lincoln or Mrs. Lincoln walking around Springfield or at the Lincoln home. I was lucky enough to run into
How's your Friday going, Mr. President?
Well, so far, I haven't had breakfast. I haven't offended anybody. I haven't made any political enemies. It's successful thus far, but once the day progresses, none of that will be true anymore.
So hopefully it'll be okay, Mr. President.
Let's hope so.
I was also able to see the office where Lincoln practiced law. Only part of the office space remains and was being renovated during my visit, but I was able to see this recreation in a temporary location. The Visit Springfield offices are in the same building. Before leaving Springfield, I was able to visit the Lincoln Museum and Library. The museum is full of exhibits covering Lincoln's childhood, his family, the Lincoln-Douglas debates, the 1860 election, his presidency, the Civil War, and his tragic death. One of my favorite exhibits was the Whispering Room, which was an immersive exhibit bringing to life some of the negative headlines and gossip from the time of Lincoln's election leading to his inauguration. There was a similar exhibit covering the Emancipation Proclamation. And I did promise I would have some cool stuff for you here at the end of the video. Now, if you're into ghost stories or just really curious about some of the superstitions that the Lincolns had, then you will not want to miss the Lincoln Ghost Walking Tour that is held during summer months and begins at the Lincoln statue in front of the Visit Springfield offices. Now, as much as I want to share this entire experience with you, sharing too much of it would really ruin the experience. And I say this as somebody who's usually not into these things, but it was really, really cool to see some of the history behind things that may have been mentioned a little bit in history, but just haven't really been covered in big detail. So you get to walk through and see part of the city along with this tour and kind of hear some of these superstitions. And that's it for today. I hope that you enjoyed learning about Abraham Lincoln's time in Springfield, Illinois. And I'll be sharing more from the city that has a lot more history beyond Lincoln. So if you're not subscribed already, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next video. And I appreciate your support, and I will see you in the next one.